Hey yo, what's up everyone? Welcome back to Yahazak Reacts, the only channel where we're so down to earth and real that I forgot I was recording a video and just started watching YouTube videos instead of reacting to them. Today, we're reacting to a video called What Went Wrong Biomutant. Now, as far as I'm aware, nobody talks about this game anymore. It's fucking dead in the ground. Let's find out why.
Convention-breaking hype, a small but passionate team trying to with convention-breaking hype, a small but passionate team trying to build a full-scale RPG with delay after delay and over 1 million copies sold, only to result in an unsatisfying flop shortly after release.
That's
this
sad.
is What Went Wrong with Biomutant, an indie open-world kung fu style RPG set in a post-apocalyptic world ruled
Yeah,
by
see, this looks
rodents that is
cool.
on the
This
brink
game
of
looks good as fuck.
collapse. I'm WickedWiz, being a man of my word and standing on your fan art.
Hell
It's
yes.
actually not bad. And I'd
Yeah,
like to
that
say a
one
massive
is
thanks
beautiful.
to my patrons who make videos like these sponsorless. The concept of Biomutant originally came from a crazy dream that the head of studio, Stefan Ljungqvist.
All right, imagine this, right? I have this crazy dream, crazy dream idea of game. Basically, the plan is simple, right? We open up, what's it called? Unity, right? And or Unreal, and then we go whip up this game, and it's gonna be like super cool, and it's gonna be 3D and a bunch of features. And also, there's 6 of us working on the entire game, and we have 1 year to make it. Good luck.
Had one night.
These are made up
From my
numbers, but
20-hour experience playing the
I
game,
think
it
that's
really
the gist
is a
of
full-on
the
kung
problem.
fu style RPG set in a world that's been devastated by
If
the
I would take a
previous
guess.
inhabitants' lack of care for the environment. Now, this
That sounds
isn't your
good.
typical post-nuclear war scenario. In fact, this world is littered by oil leaks, radiated, flaming hot, and freezing cold.
Yeah, these
zones.
environments look
All
sick.
of the ruins scattered around the world act as mere remnants of what was, and are now home to mutated monstrosities. But the world is in a process of healing.
Really, I bet the only reason this game flopped, like, as far as I'm aware, you know what? No, we'll find out by watching this video, of course. But if I were to guess one thing that happened, it's that the team size is too small and the scope of the game is too big, and the amount of time they have to finish it is not enough, and the cost it costs to feed a few employees, especially if some of them you also have to pay for the work on top of it. Like, obviously, if it's a bunch of friends, everyone's working just for free, and the only expense is people paying out of their pockets to feed themselves, basically, and rent the place they're staying at. But depending on the circumstances, you might, if you're also hiring someone to pay on top of that, and really too big of a scope, too small of a team. That'll be my guess. Now, with 1 million copies sold, they could have easily used that money to turn the game around, and the fact that I haven't heard news of that happening is kind of scary, because that makes me think the devs didn't pull a No Man's Sky.
But something's wrong. It's in danger, and there are these massive creatures called world eaters who are destroying it at the very roots. The population are now evolved rodents. There are 6 tribes for you to either join or conquer in the game that each have
cool.
their own view on how the world should be run. Choice is a big thing in this game from the very start. From character customization to weapon
These things look
crafting to
ugly as fuck, by the way.
and a karma system where you have a choice between good and evil. You'll meet a bunch of unique characters along the way, as well
A
as
little
bountiful loot.
simple, to
There
be
are
honest,
a whole
but
bunch of cool things in this
good or
game,
evil.
but a lot of it becomes quite repetitive, and many people felt that the world was kind of bland. Before we dig deep into what's wrong about the game, we first need to know what happened in development. And
Yeah, that's what I'm
thankfully,
curious
before even
about.
starting the video,
'Cause
one of the developers
which parts of the game are broken themselves, to me, is not that interesting. I want to know how it leads to those parts of the game being the way they are.
behind
What led to
Biomutant
it?
offered to give some insight into what was actually quite a secretive process. There's no interview or anything like that, and for what I hope are obvious reasons, they'll remain anonymous. So
Okay,
for now,
okay.
we'll just call him Steve. Smash like for Steve.
Yeah, Steve. Smash like for Steve, guys. Smash like on my own
Our
video as well,
development
actually.
journey
I've been noticing that some of y'all motherfuckers are just watching the video without liking them. Like, come on, you know, leave a comment, hit the subscribe button, like, all that.
Starts with
Do
the
the YouTube
company
stuff.
called Experiment
Help me
101.
with the algorithm.
Founded in the summer of 2015 by both Goodbye Kansas Game Invest, now Amplifier Game Invest, and the previously mentioned ex-Avalanche Studio employee Stefan Ljungqvist,
Okay.
who is by no means a rookie within the industry, as he previously worked on the much underrated game Mad Max, as well as Just
Never heard of it.
Cause. So they have a lot of experience and connections within the industry, and after working in some pretty big companies, Stefan wanted to try something a bit different
I mean,
when it
I know
came
Just
to
Cause.
development. Developer Steve mentioned that the team started off really small and pretty much got stuck into development straight away. There wasn't much pre-production, but there was still an idea from Stefan and the team of what the
Alright,
game could be.
well,
At this point
that's
in time,
fine.
there were only
That's
really
enough.
5 people working on this
Yeah,
game
I said
already.
6. See, my
Prototyping
prediction
away,
wasn't
coming up
even
with
that
new
far off.
ideas, testing things out, seeing what sticks. But there
This
is
game
one
looks
thing that will
fucking
become
cool, man.
very apparent in this whole cycle is that this team would remain pretty damn small throughout the whole project. Similar
Right,
to
but that's
any
fine so
indie
long as they have
studio
enough
with
time.
A lot of ambition, the work
Right.
environment was full-paced. Long hours were quite common, but overtime was always paid. None of which enforced, as some would do their 9 to 5 and go home, while others would burn the midnight oil. It was a very busy studio.
I see. I mean, yeah, that's just normal game dev in a nutshell. You know, lots of crunch, lots of no families being seen. We even watched a video on that by Nakey JK recently on how devs don't have a life.
From what I heard, and it kind of makes sense with only 5 people
Yeah.
at the time, but the culture seemed quite open and accepting of differing opinions to choices being made. This was no dictatorship, everybody had a voice and everybody worked together. On paper, it was a flat organization, meaning that there wasn't much middle management between the devs and Stefan. There was autonomy amongst the devs, but no leads for specific areas in development, and no
Right.
real workload division either. Others could have their input, and decision making would typically come down to an agreement amongst the whole team.
Yeah,
rather
but
than
so
just
long as
one
the team is
person
small
owning
enough
that
and
having
the system
final
works,
say.
I think it's fine.
A year later, in the summer of 2016, the team would then grow to around 12 people in total,
Okay.
all of which working tirelessly on prototypes and new on-the-fly features. The way they worked was pretty much like this. Stefan or someone else would come up with a cool-sounding idea or new feature to add to the game. They would then develop it, test it on the couch at the end of the week, and then decide if it needed fixing or to scrap it entirely. A lot of the development process behind this company isn't anything new. A lot of it's very much trial by fire, but this way of working does become a bit of an issue later on and probably explains why a lot of things didn't go too right. Interestingly enough, this game was originally said to be more of a top-down Diablo-style experience, but over time they found themselves zooming the camera into the world more and more that they eventually had to have a vote between the developers to decide if this game should be a third-person or top-down experience. And of course, as we already know, third person got the vote. I just really wish I could have seen at least some examples of this or show you guys some examples, because I think a lot of us would have much preferred a Kung Fu Panda Diablo sim than
I actually think that this game looks really fucking good. Like, it just looks like a world that's too big and an amount of features that's not enough for it to be entertaining for the whole experience. Shit probably gets repetitive.
THQ Nordic, as I'm told that the founders had some pretty good connections with them, and this relationship would develop into something else entirely later on. All of this progress sounds great, but not much was really seen of the game in this time.
That makes sense. Early development.
Things were so secretive that nobody really knew about this project in the first place. However, all of this would
They
change
just sat down
about a
and
year
worked.
later with the first tweet on the official Biomutant account announcing that they would be at Gamescom in August of 2017. And a day later would post this trailer on the official IGN channel, which of course quickly gained a lot of views.
Yep.
And the response was overly positive. Now, little did the guys know that a lot
Man, why
of
the
views, and the
why are comments so stupid? Defiantly the most interesting thing I've seen. It's always great to see new IPs.
response was
Definitely pre-ordering. Played it
overly
today,
positive.
Gamescom.
Now, little did
Like,
the guys know that the attention
okay, well, played it
surrounding this
today. Gamescom comment isn't that bad, but the people talking about definitely pre-ordering, bro. You've seen like 1% of what the game has to offer. Well, how the fuck do you possibly decide that that's enough info for you to go off to pre-order it?
The game would be nothing short of impressive. Their stand was quickly surrounded by people who eagerly wanted to try out the game. The queue was massive and the wait time was up to nearly 4 hours. Of course, this isn't an uncommon thing to see at conventions like this, but for a game that has barely any awareness surrounding it, only really spilling the beans just before the event is honestly really impressive.
Yeah, because it looks like a game that would be really fucking fun.
Studio. It was so crazy that the developers ended up being hassled by the event managers and also some security. And I quote from Steve, one of the THQ booth managers, jokingly said, "I hate you guys, you made my life a living hell." It's a pretty good problem to have, right?
Yeah.
Being one of the most popular games there, where people were literally waiting hours just to play it. But all of this made one thing very clear, that this game would sell. Now, it's important to say that there wasn't much of a deadline for this game initially. The general consensus within the team was that the game isn't ready until everybody's happy with it. Simply put, it's not done until it's done. Like a lot of my videos.
That's what you want to see. That is, I think, yeah, that kind of like my videos actually on my main channel. Self-plug.
In an interview still at
I think that's a good
Stefan
approach.
ran through
So long as you can afford to take your time with it, do it.
About Biomutant.
If it means the final product is better.
He was naturally asked about a release date, and he said this.
Congrats on Biomutant. I don't even know where to begin. There's so much cool stuff in this game. Do you have anything along the lines of a release date, platforms, anything like that yet?
Next year.
Next year.
PS4, Xbox One, PC.
Okay, cool.
Really? Why? Like, if you don't know when the game's gonna be done. This smells like greed to me, and I don't like it.
2018. Great. The newly formed fan base had something to look forward to, and the guys seemed pretty confident that they would achieve this rather vague goal. The problem is, though, with all the positive reception and new gained confidence for the project, the guys at Experiment decided to experiment further by expanding the scope. For example, they would end up doubling the map size from 4x4 kilometers to 8x8, extend the quest line.
That's already impossible to do in 1 year. Like, why? I don't get it, man. What is it with game devs setting themselves deadlines? And okay, fine, you set a deadline, realize it was a bad idea, then be like, actually, whoopsies, guys, we made a mistake. We'll move the deadline over to 7 years later than what we said. And you know what? I don't think that many people will complain. Someone is going to be mad on Twitter, but who cares if it means a better game ultimately? Miscalculation on your side, you know. Misprediction of when it's going to be done.
We now have a release window for some time in 2018, which could be anywhere between January to December, and even more work to do. A few months later after this, THQ Nordic went from their publisher to eventually acquiring shares in a deal that would own both the studio and the intellectual property of Biomutant. Stefan's original fear of being bought out was a lack of creative freedom. He really didn't like the idea of being controlled by a bigger company.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Pressed for deadlines and adding in things that they never really wanted to do. However, with clear terms in place, they achieved a really good deal. From my conversations with Steve, working with THQ Nordic didn't really impact development so much. It was very hands-off.
So
which, to be honest with
they
you,
just had the money to do
that. We hear all too often. And I was actually quite impressed that Stefan just stood his ground and said, no, we're going to do it this way. We're going to keep the creativity free, and we're going to work on our terms. And with this freedom, the guys were still prototyping.
Yeah, pretty rare in the industry.
Features and all that, while THQ Nordic would essentially provide a massive marketing machine to gain a lot more exposure for this game.
Sick for them.
2018 would be considered the year of mass exposure, with convention after convention after convention, with massive queues at Gamescom again.
That's roughly when I started hearing about this game, I think.
Ever growing. Because Experiment 101 was bought by THQ Nordic, the resources to do this increased massively, with the developers being able to crack on with the game, attend some events here and there, while THQ and their team would pretty much go to the rest. The great thing about conventions is that people get to try out the game. There's usually a demo and you have to play through it, which is great and all, but there's a catch. To actually experience the game, you have to attend one of these conventions.
Yeah.
There would be gameplay footage online, but not really much in the way of a downloadable demo. It was an active choice to keep the experience contained at events like these. I mean, we're all quite used to seeing.
So it could mean a few things. It could mean that they just don't want to spoil their game too hard, and they don't want to drop, you know, it when it's not quite done, or that the game is perhaps not in a state where they think they're ready to drop a full-on demo for everyone to play yet. And well, if it's that, then you know, you have reasons for concern as a guy that's planning to get the game
alphas,
soon.
betas, or early access. Yet Biomutant remained quite traditional in their approach. The issue here is that although first-hand feedback is great, people never got a chance to explore further than the allotted time. The great thing about a downloadable demo is that people get a chance to dig deeper and point out issues or raise concerns pretty early on, and well before release date. The lack of significant user research is something that can make or break a game way before release.
Yeah, but you know, not all good games release with a demo. Some just get dropped in there in a finished functional state. Elden Ring, you know, for example. Maybe there were a couple people that got early access to it to just mess around, but it wasn't any major sample sizes.
To be fair, I was informed that they would bring in friends, family, and other people.
Obviously, all games have playtests, and that's what playtesting is for. Doing public demos like this is just like open sourcing your playtesting
within the industry to test out their game, and they would frequently test it out themselves. But it's still quite a small pool of people to get feedback from.
Yep.
And the reason why I'm bringing all of this up is that it explains why a lot of people felt that this was a slightly different game to what they were expecting. Now remember, this is the year of 2018, and it's now coming towards the end of the year, and people are starting to wonder if this game is ever going to be released. We were given a really rough estimate of 2018, just 2018, no months, no days.
I know, it's clearly way too
to see some kind of announcement for an actual release
just
date.
delayed.
However, there wasn't really any response.
As you'd expect with it.
That they knew it wasn't going to.
I mean, yeah, I think it's just a bad strategy to give yourself a release date that early, especially if you're planning to add more content, which they are.
To happen, and would just hope to push it back when people complained. THQ did pitch in, and they said that the game would be released a year later in the summer of 2019, so we'll see how that turns out. But it's clear that with the extended scope of all the different things being added to the game and being fixed, that the team wasn't really ready. To be fair, at this point they are still a small team, but there is one thing that really did worry me about the development process behind this game when talking to Steve. It's great that they were adding a whole bunch of different things, new features and stuff. But like I said earlier, they would come up with a cool idea, test it out, and see if it fits in the game.
Yep.
The issue is that the features being added weren't really planned beforehand, and they essentially worked within their own little bubble. They knew that these features would have to complement with other areas in the game, and also have to interlink with other features.
I mean, they are game developers, so obviously they understand that.
Afterthought, and we'll look at that in a lot more detail later on when you see my experience of this game.
All right, I'm actually looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to seeing just how everything turns out at the
guys
end.
are still cracking on, conventions are still being attended, but coming up to summertime, people again were becoming quite concerned that this game would miss another release date. I mean, to be fair, there was never much of a release date anyway. That would imply that there was a day that it would be released.
Yeah.
But still, the game wasn't ready, and people were starting
There was no
to ask
date.
questions. Personally, I don't think delays are the worst thing. I think the reason why people get upset about them isn't so much as that they don't get the game sooner, it's that they just feel deceived. It's
Yeah,
another
exactly.
broken promise. And if you know
just
anything about the game
don't-
industry, if there are delays,
If you're planning to keep working on the game in the near future, then don't release the game until it has what you want it to have. Like, that's so obvious. How do game devs fuck that shit up? These guys even had a bunch of contracts that supplied them with plenty enough money to not worry about the development times and paying their workers and whatnot. So these guys can afford to not speedrun their release date. So why do it? I don't understand.
upon delays, people start to worry that this might turn out to be another No Man's Sky or some other game with multiple
Yeah, but No Man's Sky did a turnaround at the end, so
delays that turned out to be.
So I mean, nobody would want their new favorite game to be released in the state of No Man's Sky, but you know what people would want even less? Another Cyberpunk.
Be pretty bad.
Is this game worth it? Does that answer your question?
As gamers, we be
That is crazy fucking timing. What the hell?
bad.
Is this game worth it? Does that answer your question?
As gamers, we've been pretty scarred over the years. So even after hearing about 2 delays on a game that we quite like or quite hyped for, you start to worry if this is going downhill before it's even started. However, hype for the game was still there, and they were showing significant improvements. It was very clear that these guys were just trying to put more into the game and getting it to a place where...
And there's just not that much info to go off, so you can't really assume that the game is going to be so totally fucked. All that's happened is that the initial date they thought the game was going to be releasing on is completely off, and that's the only red flag so far, which is not that bad. I mean, fucking everyone does it. All game does. They shouldn't, but they do.
They really don't want to rush things. They want to try and put out the best they possibly can.
Yep, which is why I think announcing the release date was stupid.
Why didn't they bring more people in? At this point, they had around about 20 developers, and it was still a very ambitious project. Well, Stefan explains exactly why here.
You want to keep the team small.
Yeah. And I want to have not more people. I wanted to work with the right people. So let's not stress it. That's what. Let's find the right people.
To be honest with you, I agree with Stefan in this case. You honestly want to find the right people for the job. It's not just about the skill set, it's also about the chemistry. But I do wonder what things would have been like if there were more staff as well as development leads.
Or just more time.
2020 was a tough year for obvious reasons. The impact from lockdown, though, didn't really seem to hinder
that fucked up
as these
everyone.
Guys were based in Stockholm, and Sweden didn't really seem to have
almost everyone, I suppose.
Anymore.
Fucking.
They still had funding, worked from home, and simply just cracked on.
Yep, that's great.
Good
for them.
A bit silent, at least until June, with the IGN Summer of Gaming, where we have an interview of Stefan describing the game, all the new things about it that they've been working on, and also the challenges that they're currently facing. But in this point of development, they're now starting to refine more things, and they are still changing stuff, but they're also fixing a lot of bugs. They were also aware that promising a release date again probably wouldn't be the best idea.
Yeah,
so simply
learn from
no
your
release
lessons.
date was announced. June and July were the most active months of this year, with more in-depth interviews along with a Discord channel being announced by THQ Nordic, but then it was silent. There was a post about languages in November, but besides that, nothing. The studio kind of fizzled out from social media, and hype sort of died down as people weren't sure as to if this game would ever be released. But that would all change.
To be honest, I actually missed when the game actually dropped. I remember all the hype, and then the hype kind of died. And then when the game actually released, I missed that
On January the 26th of 2021, in an official Twitter post, a set launch date was confirmed for the 25th of May, 2021.
That would mean the game is in a great state now, right, guys? I mean, that's how the game devs would never just drop something with a coming very soon launch day when something's not in a state where it would actually be ready for it by then.
This was the first confirmed
release
date. There was a day, there was a month, and there was a year. It's clear that the team were towards the end of development, patching bugs, finalizing small things, and surely confident that they'll actually release the game. With all the revived hype, Experiment 101 came out with a proper response as to why they were so silent for the past few months. Stefan says,
we were too busy working.
Amount of work for QA, because it's not easy in an open world game to find them. And then once they've been found, we have to fix them. And that puts some additional challenge on us, being a small team. Any game is going to ship with smaller bugs.
I think this game...
I'm talking about bugs that are truly disruptive to the game experience.
I mean, from the looks of this looks like a game that could have benefited from more just like a fucking free beta release or something, just a demo.
We don't want to ship with that. I think that's what's caused us to just wait until we're ready to do it. This
or
is
not
quite
free.
A respectable
a
statement.
pre-release.
And the best thing about this is that THQ Nordic never twisted their arm to crunch overtime in order to rush the game out. They also supported
that is really good for the devs.
Assurance process with a dedicated team to comb through the game, and that's something that you don't hear about all too much in the industry.
Yeah, no. Normally, if the game is not looking like it's gonna be done in time, well, sleep is kind of irrelevant, right? Who cares about sleep? Who cares about seeing your family? Who cares about anything, really? I mean, personal life is for those that have a life, and us game devs, we don't. I mean, us, not like literally me, but you know
being
what I
set
mean.
a deadline by the parent company. Also, Stefan knows martial arts, so I don't think they really wanted to mess with him anyway. Coming up to launch day, the marketing was impressive to say the least. Paying PewDiePie a fair amount of money to endorse the game on a stream that ran for about 4 hours, and even Conan, of all people. I mean, I don't watch the guy, I barely know the guy, but I know he's very famous and he plays games every now and then.
Never heard of him.
Publicity was skyrocketing. But here's the question: did the game release or did it not? Well, it's the 25th of May, and yeah, it released. They sold over 1 million copies, each at the price of about 55 quid, which is about $60 in USD. This price,
I think that's where the biggest problem lies. It's an indie game with a AAA price tag. Negative reviews are gonna come with that.
It did cause a bit of an issue. The reason why they made it that price is so that they could recoup on investment, which is fair enough. But it's AAA pricing for what is essentially an indie game.
That's literally what I said. I am the smartest man alive. I wish I could scream louder and shit, but my throat hurts really bad right now, so I can't be as hype as I normally would be. But trust me, mentally, I am shitting and pissing myself at the same time.
But besides that, there weren't really too many issues with launch day. I mean, people who
that glove looks straight out of the. That looks like the glove from Crash, from the Crash games.
Really too many.
If anyone knows what they're called, please do send me a link. They were like explosive, and the gloves would run at you, and then they'd blow up.
Issues
That's
with
so cool.
launch day. I mean, people who pre-ordered the mercenary class had some trouble unlocking it, but that was quickly resolved. And
Nice,
it wasn't
good.
really a pre-order only.
No Man's Sky didn't do that. It's such a great job with pre-orders.
Either. You can buy it as a DLC for cheap, which kind of sucks, but it literally is their only DLC besides a soundtrack. I mean,
that's
one
fair.
of the philosophies around this game that is essentially a looter shooter in a lot of ways with a lot of loot boxes is that they didn't believe in microtransactions, which, again, I'll say it, if they ended up with a Kung Fu Panda Diablo game with no microtransactions, oh boy, did they miss an opportunity.
Yeah, no, but this looks even better visually. It looks so promising, man. Fact. The fact that it's called What Went Wrong and the initial reviews are mixed, that's where my concern lies. And the fact that I haven't heard anything about the game, despite the fact that it's been out for a while now.
Now, there was an issue with the next-gen consoles not being able to really play in 4K, but that would be the least of the issues, because, of course, after a few hours of people actually playing the game, it didn't take all too long to realize that this wasn't all it was hyped up to be. Reviews came in with more critical ones calling it mediocre, that it had a bland story, it being a good example of what happens when someone makes a Ubisoft game without Ubisoft resources, and a lot of the criticism boils
Ubisoft games are kind of shit, though, so I think that's it. It's like if someone makes a Ubisoft-sized game without Ubisoft resources, because don't say make a Ubisoft game. They make the same game every year over and over again. They have zero creativity. Don't compare someone trying to release something unique and cool with that
to it feeling a bit like a half-finished product
and
very repetitive. Now, there were of course people who...
And repetitiveness is just not even necessarily like the game being repetitive and lots of gameplay elements suffering is not necessarily bad game design. It could be straight up a lack of features. There could just be not enough shit to do. Long game, if it's a very long game, but the gameplay loop is... But you get to see the whole gameplay loop in the first 3 hours. Well, then what reason do you have to keep playing? I think that is the kind of problem this game's suffering from.
But still noted the glaring issues such as the skin-deep features and, again, the repetitive nature throughout the campaign. We can sit here all day looking at reviews, but it's now June of 2022, a whole year later after release. So the question is,
how's the game looking?
Well, I can tell you straight away that for 55 quid, the price doesn't really match up with the final product in terms of value. I was honestly expecting a lot more from this game, and I didn't even know about the team size before making this video. So with a price tag like that and a very flashy looking trailer, I assumed that this was another AAA game by THQ Nordic. Let's start off with exploration. This is an RPG after all, so exploration is a big part of the experience.
Makes sense.
There are loads of different places to explore and loot. The world is beautiful.
The performance looks pretty bad from these videos, by the way, from the footage he's showing. Actually, he had some comment about that. Let's read that real quick. After 20 hours worth of footage coming out as staggered as this, it's time to buy a new GPU. Okay, that's issues on his side, not the game itself.
Hot and cold zones,
necessarily, at least.
Vibrantly toxic areas, oil-ridden wastelands.
Yeah, this looks fucking
lakes,
sick.
Complexes,
This is like this is how I envisioned Jack and Daxter looking when I was playing it back like a few years, years ago.
Unique regions. When exploring the world, I would often get distracted, and then I'd see a petrol station. And because this game teaches you very early on that you can pretty much loot any place, you'll always be looking for that next component or next clothing item. Although I did feel like the journey between locations like this felt a bit lifeless at times. It was almost like the action would only really be surrounded in either ruins or just different structures. The roads in between, you might find a few NPCs fighting, maybe some
turn off motion blur, by the way.
Here and there, and the odd furry trying to convert you to a life of hedonism. But that was never much of an issue. In fact, I've had quite a few unique encounters. Like this one right here,
that's
where I
cool.
stumbled across a burning village. It was under attack by a rival tribe, so I decided to help out. After wiping them out and watching this guy continuously drown for about 5 minutes, I was given this short side quest to help rebuild the town, which is actually a really nice feature.
Yeah, that's fucking that is exactly what I want from a game like this. That is perfect.
To help and then leave. You can also.
But if there's just not enough encounters like that, well then fuck. It's just bad.
By helping them rebuild. Although the quest itself was honestly just fetch this, fetch that, go here, cut some wood, go there, cut some wood. But
yo, what's up? I just had to dip for a few minutes, so I really don't remember what exactly I was saying at this point in the video, because I was talking about something. I remember I took a break mid fucking sentence. Can't remember what the sentence was. I'm sure it wasn't nothing.
Help out. After wiping them out and watching this guy continuously drown for about 5 minutes, I was given this short side quest to help rebuild the town, which is actually a really nice feature.
Right, yeah. Oh yeah, I remember. I said this was great. And then yeah.
You can also win good karma points by helping them rebuild.
Fuck yeah.
Although the quest itself was honestly just fetch this, fetch that, go here, cut some wood, go there, cut some wood. But it felt good. I felt like I did something. I felt like I actually made a difference in this world. Some places that you explore are just loot dumps.
I retied my hair kinda ugly, but I don't care anymore. Let's just.
But others have mini bosses and special items. After defeating the boss, I found this weird gooey liquid that I of course touched, and thanks to that, I was able to change my body shape, giving myself a massive head. There's also this.
Yeah, that's cool. That's like what.
It's this
That's fucking sick.
dry wasteland with a lot of cool little places to explore, and in it I managed to obtain a balloon, which I could only really seem to use in this area. And this, along with the weird mutation, I could only really find them after deviating from the quest line. Now this world is massive and there is a lot to explore, but
and I bet there's a few more features like this that the game doesn't show you that you're missing out on by not exploring. But if most of the time exploring is boring as fuck, then why would you do it? Then you'll just miss out on all the cool stuff.
To do so very quickly wears off. And to be honest with you, it's to do with a whole combination of things. Let's start with the problems behind the story.
See it.
The story was arguably one of the weakest parts in this game. I get that they worked hard on it, like most things, but after what was quite an interesting start, being introduced to the first World Eater, seeing the devastation that it would cause, meeting the first tribes, it all just started to feel a bit meh. Especially with the way that they tell the story through these characters.
This is more important than your silly business.
You'll quickly come to realize that the dialogue feels more like an assortment of fortune cookies than anything else.
Right,
it's
yeah,
quite a
that's a problem.
Statement, but most of the dialogue would just go on about the future of the world, the past, and moral choices. It's okay in chunks, but it ends up feeling like everyone is saying the same thing over and over again.
Kind of probably because the arc is just one, like, it's probably like two people responsible for giving dialogue to everyone. And with a game of that size and a team of that small, it's the old story, the same old story.
In a slightly different way. As I've mentioned before, everyone speaks a sort of gibberish. And this is then kind of narrated by the narrator. Now, I know a lot of people didn't really like the narrator.
I actually thought that is a cool system. I've heard people talk about this. Like, I've heard a little bit of discussion about this game before, and that's one of the things I know that as a interesting narration style, and maybe it gets annoying if you play the game for a while, but from the sound of it, it's actually kind of neat.
To too much. Personally, I think he sounds a lot like Stephen Fry.
You shouldn't challenge someone that has nothing left to lose.
So I did get a Little Big Planet vibe every now and then, but he's not too much of an issue because you can turn him off.
Fair.
I do really wish that they had multiple voice actors, and the reason why is that I feel like the narration
that makes
takes
sense.
away from the personality.
That is actually a good point. Yeah, you're listening to the way a character sounds, and then like it is good that they at least show you what the initial character speaking gibberish is supposed to sound like. But hearing the narration afterwards is, at the end of the day, that's the voice you're understanding.
These characters, you can see them expressing themselves a little bit here and there, and the way they look, and even the pitch of their gibberish. But with the narration being the same for everybody, the emotion that conveys is also the same.
Yeah.
There's not really much of a difference. Moving on, there are 3 main story quests that all kind of interlink, and are all required to complete for the end credits. You have the story about your past as a child, where you complete these flashbacks that were okay for storytelling, but kind of boring to play. They also give these flashbacks that you get upgrades.
That's not good. Yeah, I don't. If the gameplay is boring, I don't care how good the story is. I am gonna be bored. That's just how it works most of the time.
Automaton, where as a child you're being attacked by an adult, and it doesn't matter if you win or lose, you'll still get the upgrade, so it's totally pointless.
Oh.
And then you have the.
That's also. I don't know if it is bad game design or not, but I actually have a bit of like a distaste towards things where the game has you do a bunch of shit. I don't like when the game has you do something and it's meaningless, unless it somehow like makes complete sense lore wise, and you know it's like about a message that everything you do is meaningless and whatnot. But if it's just a little staged event in the game where it gives you the illusion of choice or the illusion of being able to do something by being better than the opponent or whatever, but at the end it's still the same result no matter how you play it, that just feels like kind of like hand-holding but with extra steps.
Which are a whole other issue that we'll touch on later. And finally, the quest line for saving the Tree of Life. Remember when I said choice was a big thing in this game? I like to sell it the way that the developers would sell it, because now I can tell you how meaningless a lot of the choice is within this game.
Literally, I just said... God, fucking damn it, this game is doing exactly what I'm saying I don't like what games do. I can, like, that just fucking sucks.
For example, you can make a choice at the beginning to join one of 2 tribes. The Jagni, who wish to destroy the Tree of Life and start anew, or the Myriad, who would like to keep it alive so nobody else dies. Here's a big spoiler. It doesn't really make a difference to your gameplay whatsoever. You see, the Jagni tribe wants to use the
world. So it might make a difference in what the cutscenes show, but you'll play the game the same way, so it doesn't actually matter.
Whereas the Myriad wishes to defeat them. And being totally off-brand, I chose to go with the good guys, the Myriad tribe. So of course my mission was to kill the World Eaters. But after completing the game, I had a look online to see how the Jagni tribe would actually use the World Eaters to destroy the tree. And get this right, for some reason, you still need to defeat the World Eaters. But instead of them just being dead, they just go back to munching on the tree. It makes absolutely no sense. Allied with the Myriad,
okay, of course.
Kill them. It's exactly the same experience.
So it's the same, but the cutscene that plays at the end of what you do is different. Literally what I said a minute ago I don't like in games.
Minus just a slightly extended cutscene.
That's fucking dumb.
Anyway, just leave them to it. They're already doing a good job. You don't need to beat up the poor World Eaters just to show them who's boss.
You're on their team. Why are you doing this?
Amount of repetition. People said it in the reviews. I didn't see the reviews before playing the game, but looking at them now, I totally understand why a lot of people just felt a bit let down. Most of the quests are essentially fetch this, speak to that. A good example is,
and those are my favorite types of quests, as you know. There's nothing I love more. Actually, as you probably don't know, because I've not talked about this shit before, but there's nothing I like more in a game than fetch quests. I love me needing to go to a different spot to do something that the person could have done themselves. Go grab me a flower, please. It's this one right here. Pick it up yourself!
Follows a very similar formula, of which you need to build either a mech, boat, submarine, or find some unique mount that has the weirdest face I think I've ever seen.
These things look goofy as fuck. What the hell?
Unique mount that has the weirdest face I think I've ever seen on a creature ever. And each one pretty much has the same kind of quests. First, you need to speak to somebody in charge of the mission. They'll go get you to collect an item for whatever you need to build. So you'll go collect the item and then you'll return back to them. And then they'll ask you to go and collect another item somewhere else. And it's essentially rinse and repeat until you've built the thing and then you fight the boss. It is fun the first couple of times.
Right.
You get to explore the world as you go. But later on, I'll just find myself hopping between fast travel points, making the whole thing seem pointless.
Yeah, fast travel also kind of just... That's a whole nother problem. Fast travel in open world games. I mean... There's a lot that can be done with it. Ark does fast travel pretty well. It lets you fast travel, but you lose your shit. So you only do it, like you leave stuff behind when you go to a new point. So in Ark, what you'd want to do is have a few points of fast travel, and you set them up manually, and it works. It all works pretty well. But in a game like this, where the experience is very much more curated to like how you're supposed to play through the game, fast travel fucks with games so much. But again, it's too big of... I think fast travel is too big of a topic to discuss in a video that's only got 5 minutes of runtime left, or 10 or whatever.
Tribe wars have a similar issue. To beat a tribe, you need to take out 3 strongholds before storming the headquarters. Each stronghold has its own strategy, where you either go in balls blazing with the lads and defeat enemies in a combination of combat and simple puzzles,
100% what I'd be doing.
Something like their water supply, artillery, or take the stronghold by disturbing a moth's nest. Yeah, I'm not joking. I took over a stronghold with moths. Or
hell yes. I mean, are they giant moths that go like fuck everyone over, or are they just kind of moths?
Leader by either persuading them to join you, which for some reason I could do very easily. I guess it must have been my commando class or something like that. Or you can challenge them head on and defeat their champion. Now, there are about 5 other tribes, and with that, about 15 strongholds to defeat. But what happens when you go to war with the leader? Well, this is the strangest part. Each time you'll have an army ready for battle, but you first have to speak to your leader, where he'll then tell you to go fetch something like a torch or a helmet. I mean, as if my helmet isn't already good enough, and come on, man.
Yeah,
who in this army doesn't have a torch? Either way, you grab said items and you'll use them to get over the wall or breach the gate. And then it's the same thing. You'll fight a whole bunch of rodents.
Well, so they somehow managed to integrate fucking fetch quests into army stuff, into like full-scale battles. Man, I love game design. I love video games.
Encounter the rival leader. And you do all of this on your own. You have this massive army and even some cutscenes where you see somebody else coming in with you, but then you're just on your own fighting all these enemies. It's almost like you just have this army outside, I guess, to come in when things get real bad. But
yeah.
Of course, that's never going to happen anyway. The only time your tribe helps out is when you're actually fighting the leader. It's just these little things on top that don't really make sense. The funniest part about all of this
that's
is
just
you can
dumb.
avoid the fight by just persuading them to join. And again, there was no issue doing this. I could have literally done this for every leader, but I chose to fight them because that's more fun.
He didn't expect it would go down this way. It'll be hard.
So you just click persuade and they get persuaded. No, this is awesome gameplay. This is what we like to see.
Not sure if you're likable enough to just... He realizes a peaceful end would be best. He'll
Click persuade to persuade.
Persuasion in this game
Persuasion
is
completed.
a speedrunning strat at this point, because the outcome is always the same. The issue with the tribes, though, is that the formula is pretty much recycled again and again. Each stronghold within a region looks the same. Like literally,
wow, that's so
internally,
cool. And you
everything's
have to do
the
it
same
6
besides
times.
headquarters.
Hell
The
yeah.
dialogue when you defeat any
Gameplay.
stronghold is always the same. The leader just looks mad at you and says this.
He says you made them weaker, but they won't give up. He says you made them weaker, but they won't give up. He says you made them weaker, but he says you made them weaker, but they won't give up.
All in all, I went from loving the whole tribe system to absolutely hating
That
it.
is
Now, this game
so
in ways is
bad.
a looter shooter,
Man,
and
finish
you
your
can see it's fun
fucking game
at
before
first, but
publishing
mid to
it.
end game, it does again become a bit of a chore. This game doesn't feel all too balanced in a lot of ways. Maybe I was lucky, but early on I found a pretty OP weapon. I couldn't use it for a bit because I wasn't a high enough level, but the moment I reached that level, my curiosity to explore further and actually find more things quickly diminished. It's not that I'm expecting to get really lucky and get the best loot every single time. It's just that there is so much loot to find in this game, but when you get to a certain point, a lot of it's pretty much junk. And you'll end up recycling most of the things you get anyway. It kind of sucks as well because I found a lot of cool things, but I could never really justify either wearing them or adding them.
Yeah, I fucking hate when you get something really sick in a game, but there's no reason to use it because you just have something better available to you at that very moment. And it's not like better subjectively or anything. It's literally just a better number, like higher number on the, like literally armor that looks maybe cooler, that maybe has cool effects, but the damage is lower. So why would I use this fucking gun why would I use the flamethrower when I can use the normal metal pole for 6 times the damage? You know what I'm saying?
Because I already had something with much better stats.
Yeah.
Although none of this really did stop me from actually looking around for new stuff. I was still curious.
Because there's the chance, it's gambling.
But I would quickly find myself focusing less on doing that and more on just trying to complete this game. This brings me on to crafting, which is probably one of the most fun aspects behind this game.
Oh,
it honestly feels
I was expecting him to say one of the worst or whatever. I'm actually glad this game got crafting good. Well, I don't know how crafting works yet because we haven't watched this part of the video, but it sounds
really
good.
like the fact that you can pretty much create your own weapon from scratch. You can start with a base component and then add a whole bunch of different things onto it. And
Metal pole!
A bit of tongue-in-cheek because I've never played a game before where you can quite literally use a banana as a handle for a knife. The issue behind crafting though is that it's essentially a game of adding anything with the highest DPS. There didn't seem to be many limitations for just adding stuff with a higher damage output. Some stats might decrease, but never really enough to justify using something else. When it actually comes to customization in this game, I have to say they've done a pretty damn good job. Being able to customize your character from the start is fairly standard with RPGs, but I like how your genetics or the way you look directly impact your stats.
Yeah, that's cool. If you make yourself buff, your guy will play as if he's buff.
None of the weapons are class locked, so you have the choice to play in whatever way you wish. And although I didn't bother much with it, I like the idea of customizing your mech or boat. Even though you only really need to use them in specific areas, and where fast travel isn't available between quests, it's still a nice added bonus to say the least. Let's talk about combat. This is the
Man, that bow looks cool, but yeah, when fast travel is a thing, there's no reason to use it, then it's kind of stupid that someone went through the time and effort of making it just for you to use it for 30 minutes of your entire fucking playthrough.
Let's talk about combat. This is the one bit where I really wish the frame rate on the footage was better, because combat is full of different combos for each weapon type, and you can have a lot of fun with it. Not to mention the mutations that you can...
But yeah, okay, so the frame rate in the game itself, from what I understand, isn't horrible. It's just the footage.
As well as the
so that's good at least.
Which you unlock from their karma system, or should I say aura. To be honest, I did find that a lot of the abilities were useless, but the mucus ball, that was fun. Just sticking enemies to it and launching them into water every single time. It's one of the first mutations you get and probably one of the best. Although I'll be honest, combat got dry pretty fast. You could go face to face and have fun with it, but instead you'll naturally find yourself kiting most enemies. I wouldn't do this all the time, but when there was a bigger enemy and the fact that pretty much everyone is a bullet sponge in this game, it's just so easy to circle around them and just dodge.
Sorry, I forgot I existed for a second. I just started watching this video. That was fucking crazy.
You could go face to face and
what the
have fun
fuck?
with it, but instead you'll naturally find yourself kiting most enemies.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But when there was a bigger enemy and the fact that pretty much everyone is a bullet sponge in this game, it's just so easy to circle around them and just dodge a million times while doing these cool slow-mo moves. And although fighting earlier on is pretty fun because you have kind of...
So instead of combat where you run at them with your sword and then you go, what you do is the fucking pixel gun strats. I don't, this is gonna be super obscure, but if anyone has ever spammed the shit out of pixel gun a few years ago, that was the fastest strat of farming money, like the best, is going into the arena mode and running around in a circle, kiting enemies forever. You did it as long as your fingers could manage, because it's a game you play on your phone or tablet, right? And what was the The moment you stop is when your thumb hurts too much from like sliding on the phone screen like that for too long. Like it actually just starts to, the skin on your finger, like on the nail, starts to hurt. And that's when you give up. And the most efficient strat there was literally running backwards, and you use an AoE gun of sorts, whatever one you choose, and you just go forever. It's so fucking stupid. I spent hours of my life doing that shit.
It's very easy to switch into the kite meta. Also, there was this weird glitch where enemies can't enter buildings. And I had this experience multiple times. I actually wondered if enemies could enter buildings at all. So I used my trusty mucus ball, stuck a bunch of fur bags to it, and took them inside. And yeah. They just kind of float there. This was pretty damn weird to see, and I did ask as to why they probably didn't fix it. There's an issue to do with pathfinding within buildings, so I guess they never really got round to fixing it and just kind of left.
What, never got around to fixing it, or like at the start?
Could clearly get through the garage door. You just kind of have this weird standoff where they're not really attacking you, they're just kind of like looking at you, and they would shoot every now and then. And to be fair, this was the only bug I encountered in the game. I was actually really impressed that this was the only thing I could complain about when it comes to the quality. Now, there's a lot more that I could say about the game for this review segment, but the most glaring issues that both I found as well as a lot of people largely come down to the repetitive nature of it all. Altogether, these were the things that stuck out to me the most. None of it is terrible.
And I think all the repetitiveness is just a different way of saying there is not enough actual content in the game. There's a lot of stuff you're supposed to do, like a lot of bullet points to check, you know what I mean? But it's not content. It's just things you're checking off the list. And whether doing them is fun or not depends on how many times you've done them before in your playthrough.
Or even that bad at first. But after experiencing the game myself, I now get why a lot of people felt that it was kind of boring and a bit mediocre. In the beginning, where I was learning new things, exploring the world, going deep underground just to find some new rare loot, that to me was the most fun I had in this game. Exploring this vibrant world, defeating the first and second world eater, getting really excited to upgrade my weapon and craft new things, all of that was awesome. It just got too repetitive.
So it's just a game that's too long for its own good.
Towards the end. It's like a sad semi. It's about halfway there, but you can't really do much with it. In contrast to what I've said, I think
things that make me think what could have been are the saddest. Like there's nothing worse than a game with so much potential that just doesn't fucking live up to what you expected it to. It's just man, why the fuck did this happen?
Cult of the Lamb.
What?
Cult of the Lamb.
Yeah, Cult of the Lamb.
But I do also think it could have been better planned. There are a lot of different things that sort of feel skin deep and kind of thrown in there. And we pretty much know why after looking at the development process. It was clear that they were just constantly prototyping, not really planning things. They were just kind of coming up with cool ideas, adding them in, seeing if they would fit. And if it does, then would figure out how it would complement the rest of the game. Speaking with Steve was a massive eye-opener. And they were nothing more than helpful and honest to the research.
Right, but what of the game now? It's been a few years. Well, it's been a while even since the video he's made. And what about since release? As of the time this video was released, the game has been out for a while.
Not much was known about the game in early development, and even in the public eye,
So did they just not? Did they literally just take the cash and run? Biomutant on Steam is still mixed. Nobody's playing the game. Nothing's the game. The devs. The game devs. Why is that so hard to pronounce? Jesus. Have done nothing. What you see is what you get. What you see at on release, what this guy's showing is what the game's been. It's been 9 months. We look at No Man's Sky. It had one of its biggest updates recently. That game is popping off. And then there's Biomutant. They make the game, priced it way too high, took the cash, and fucking ran with it. That's fucking cringe, man. I hate that. That is the #1 sin of game development. That is the #1 thing all players hate the most. And I think it's not even close.
The inner workings behind development. So, thank you, Steve, for giving us the insight that we needed. But besides the AAA price tag, all I could really see from this studio is a lot of hard work with quite an ambitious title and a lot of passion behind this project. It was clearly a risk sticking with a small team.
Well, yes, but like, okay, I can forgive all of that shit if a game eventually ends up being good some 3 years down the line. But they did nothing. They did nothing with it. They just left it to rot and die. And that's so fucking sad, man.
Anyway, thank you so much for watching. If you made it all this way towards the end, why not subscribe? And I'd also like to say again a massive, massive thanks to my Patreons, and also a special thanks to my Wicked Slayers. And
subscribe to his channel, guys. WickedWiz. I'll obviously link his shit in the description. Go also check out my main channel. I don't upload that much there, but the videos I do drop are pretty cool, pretty fucking busted, for real, low cap, no key. Making a new one right now. It's gonna be a little while before it comes out, probably like half a year, but hey. Alright. That's all the fucking plugs done. Make the algorithm gods proud for me, please. And alright. See you in the next one.